have been a real blessing to our area, and looking forward to hear what these guys have to say. So obviously mountain biking continues to thrive and grow in rural Minnesota. Get a grip on the downside as our growing momentum propels us forward into new opportunities. And we're going to hear from these leaders about the risks and rewards of continuing to grow this adventurous arm of tourism. First off, we have Max Peters. Max is the city administrator for the city of Cohasset. He's also the executive director of the EDA. Max was instrumental in the completion of the Untitled recreational area, Cohasset Phase 2 Industrial Park, and ISD 318 Cohasset Elementary Child Care and Community Center collaboration. Those projects totaled over $21 million, while managing a $4.5 million city portfolio. Next is a registered investment advisor representing Gloria Capital Management. He's CFO of Red Willow and owner of Lakeside Real Estate LLC. In a previous life, Max was a product development engineer for HID Global, Beckman, Coulter, and Stratus. Max maintains an MBA from the University of Minnesota, Carlson School of Business, and a BS in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Colorado at Boulder. Max loves his two daughters, Ava and Maya, and flow sports, Montana, living on the lake, and Dillinger Pool. Dr. Philip Emholt is a family physician at Grand Itasca here in Grand Rapids and currently chair of GRIMBA, Grand Rapids and Itasca Mountain Bicycling Association. He and his family enjoy outdoor activities like biking, running, and cross-country skiing. And finally, we have David Gabris. David is an accomplished brand builder, business executive, and team leader with more than 25 years of experience in the bicycle industry. He's immersed in the culture of cycling since he was a teenager in northern Wisconsin. Gabris is known for building the winter cycling brand 45 North and turning bold ideas into tangible experiences and award-winning products. Through strategic marketing campaigns and community partnerships, David strives to bring his vision of cycling as freedom and adventure to people across the world. His work has been covered in global media such as Bicycling Magazine, Popular Science, Wired Magazine, Outside Magazine, The Radavist. Gabris was also awarded the Eurobike Design Award in Friedrichshafen, Germany in 2012 for the Wolvenhammer Winter Cycling Boot. That was a tough one. I had to read that 8 times. In addition to 45 North, David leads Veraville tires and parts and accessories brand portfolio at Quality Bicycle Products. Since creating 45 North, Gabris has established himself as a prominent brand business leader, influencer, and product innovator. He's happier exploring new places with friends on his bike, honing his photography skills, and working on the conversion band he's building from scratch. Minneapolis is his home base. So, gentlemen, thank you.
So welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this session. I'm Megan Christensen. I'm the Executive Director of Visit Grand Rapids, the Tourism Bureau for the Greater Grand Rapids area. And I will be the moderator for today's session. And I have some questions, and then we will open it up to all of you for additional questions. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We just want to point out first what's here on the screen is ridetherange.com. So Ride the Range is a collaboration between Visit Grand Rapids and Iron Range Tourism Bureau and several of the trail groups and the communities in which those trails reside in. Up in the top corner, you can find each of the trails. They have their own designated page. They have information about them. They have visuals so you can see what you're going to expect on the trail. You can learn more information about that area. There, within each of these pages, there are links to the tourism bureaus, the Chamber of Commerce for lodging, for other things to do in that area. So example, here's Tioga and the Grand Rapids. Iron Range Tourism Bureau has Giants Ridge and Redhead, so they would be linked on those pages. It kind of highlights each of the areas, gives some visuals of what you can expect when you're there. This is phase 1 of our collaboration. Max and I We worked with David and his partner, and I can't remember, Brian Lambert, to create this for us. And we think that they did a fabulous job of pulling us all together and highlighting the range area to ride. What we're really proud about is that all of us were able to come together, not only year one, we've all committed for year two. And sometimes that's hard to keep that commitment ongoing, continuing down the road. But we see the value because none of us individually have the dollars to market, but collectively we can do some things that are outside the box. So we're excited to see what year two will bring, but I really encourage you to go to ridetherange.com to check out all of the different opportunities in our area for mountain biking. So that's first, we wanted to highlight that, and thank you. David suggested that we pull this up, and it was funny because as I was sitting in the last session, I was on my phone, ridetherange.com, thinking, is there anything I need to pull out of it? So it's great that it's here. I encourage you to go check it out. Okay. The first question I have, and I'm just going to kind of point to each of you, is the microphone on?
No.
Turn it on.
Yep.
And then you guys can just pass this back and forth from bottom to bottom. Awesome. I'm going to start with Phil. Okay, so Phil, what was the main reason that you got involved into the mountain bike trail development for the Cohasset area?
Well, I like mountain biking, so that was obviously this kind of a selfish motivation to see that these trails would happen. And the other reason, though, is just from a community building standpoint. I could see by the time I got involved a little bit in 2015, but more into 2016, what had been happening at Crosby or Cuyuna and the potential for our community and as far as economic development. So that was actually maybe an equal motivation, although I don't have any stake in, direct stake in a business or anything to build the bicycling community, but just from what I think I would like to envision for the future of my direct neighborhood and community.
Awesome. I'm going to pass that to Max. So Max, kind of answer the same question, because not only are you the city administrator, finance director of the city of Cohasset, you also live in Cohasset. So answer that. You can answer it however you want.
My involvement with the project really starts from my job as a city administrator for the city of Cohasset, and looking at Parks and Rec and our park system in Cohasset. Tioga really starts about 8 years ago with Bob Moore from the DNR, and then seeing what had been built at Cuyuna and coming back to the Cohasset Grand Rapids area and saying, why can't we have this in our backyard? We have the same type of terrain, the same type of potential, and really getting between Bob Moore and then pulling Rimba involved. And then because it's in Cohasset, we really got involved with the project. When I started, I was not a mountain biker. I did not own any bikes. So it was truly just from an economic development standpoint for the city of Cohasset, looking at the value of what it meant to the city of Duluth and the cities of Cuyuna, and the economic impact and magnitude of what those brought to each of those communities.
Awesome. I'm going to have to pass it to David. So David is our stats guy. So he's going to share some statistical data just for you to wrap your head around mountain biking. So mountain biking is relatively new to us here in the greater Grand Rapids area, but mountain biking has been around for a long time. So I remember when I first got involved in the conversation, probably 8 years ago, Max and Greg came to my office and said, what do you think about this? Are you in? I'm like, I know nothing about mountain biking. Didn't own a bike, really, knew that it existed in the outdoor recreation. The concept was new and fresh, right? So you're going to share some stats with us. So just kind of share from a Midwest perspective, what are we looking at here for riders?
Yeah, so before jumping into the stats, I would just say that, with bicycles are freedom, and when people ride bicycles for the first time, there's this sense of freedom and enjoyment and being able to explore space faster than just walking. And as a kid, that's what really drew me to cycling. And I really got started with the community development side of what I do by working with Cuyuna back in 2014, 2015. They were working on ways to enhance their grooming technology for their trails there, so they could have riders riding all winter long. And along that path, what I was seeing in my professional life was people riding these fat bikes for the first time. They have 4-inch wide tires and they look really heavy and kind of unapproachable. But when they would ride the bikes, they would be amazed at how well they performed on snow and even on dirt, really stable platforms to ride on. So we started building these networks of trails in Cayuna that were groomed, and people started coming there in the winter as well as the summer to ride these fat bikes. And it just opened up a door of opportunity for people to really, to really take on that desire to, be outside and exploring, the forest and fresh air in the winter. So that's really been inspiring to me, just to see people gravitate towards cycling in a way that's really unusual and kind of scary, riding in the winter. And all of this really points to this growth, really points to the demand that's happening. If you look at the 2020 statistics for Strava is a fitness app where when you go and ride your bike, you click the button and it'll record your ride and how far and how fast, and people have challenges, you can race your segments on Strava. But Strava is an amazing platform to capture data. And the 2020 data from Strava revealed that there was a 72% increase in activities amongst women and a 42% increase among men in cycling. Just amazing growth. And in 2020, in the bicycle industry, the mountain bike category grew 70% alone. So what we're seeing now is really extended lead times with products. It takes us 3 years to get a product, a mountain bike now, from the time that we place a purchase order, because this demand has spiked and shocked our supply chain so incredibly. So it really begs the question, what are people doing? And people are getting on their bikes and they're seeking out different destinations to ride in. There are more people riding more miles in different places than I've ever seen in the bike industry in the 25 years that I've been there. We constantly measure something called fill rate. The organization I work for is also a distributor, so we sell bicycle parts to every single retailer in the country. We're the largest distributor in North America. So what happens in our distribution centers is really a reflection of the demand that's happening in the market. Pre-COVID in normal times, we would be striving for fill rates of above 95%. So 95% of the products, we have 40 or 50,000 SKUs that we sell. We would want 98% of those ideally in stock, and that was our target. We have been struggling to keep it above 40% for the past year. That's an indication of the demand that's happening in the bike industry in general. And to speak more specific to the locals, there have been studies in northern Wisconsin about the economic impact and who are these people and what do they do and how much money do they have? And 60% of upper Midwest cyclists, what these studies reveal is that 60% of upper Midwest cyclists have incomes of over $100,000 a year. And 60% of that group spends more than $2,300 per year on cycling alone. So that doesn't include the money that they spend, on hotels and restaurants when they're out at these destinations. These people have money and they spend a lot of it on cycling and their ability to get to places where they can ride. So it's really, when you think about the stats behind it, it really points to demand and people wanting to be riding in more places. And really the question is, what are these regions doing to attract these people here and to keep them? But I could probably talk forever about this, but the point being is that there's a ton of demand, people want to go places, and what are we doing to attract them to these places?
I'll start with Max on this next question. Thank you so much, David, for sharing that. What have been the top positives, we're gonna start with positives first, outcomes of the mountain bike trail development in Cohasset?
I think the first is the amount of people that are utilizing those trails, both locally and, region-wide, people coming from the Twin Cities area. We're seeing approximately 35,000 users in 2020 alone. So just that activity that's being spurred. And I think what's really exciting about Tioga and Ride the Range is it's not just local Tioga, it's Tioga coupled with Cuyuna, Redhead, Giants Ridge, Duluth. I mean, Duluth is already by itself, one of only 6 gold level indoor ride centers in the world. So now you really look at this region as having gone from, basically not much in mountain biking, in the way of mountain biking, to now being a national and international destination. So really being a strong attraction point for people to come to your community. Immediately the second thing, for Cohasset, that question that's been asked is, how does Cohasset benefit directly? There's 2 restaurants, there's 1 gas station. We're pretty much the Remora Fish to Grand Rapids. We've got a lot of industrial, manufacturing type of businesses, but we don't have a lot of necessarily retail. But the $300,000 investment that the city of Cohasset made, and now with Tioga being what Tioga is, that was the catalyst for a $120 million downtown project along the Mississippi River. It's in pre-permit. We're hoping to start construction in the spring, but that project would not have received nearly the interest from the developer if Tioga wouldn't have, if Tioga didn't exist, it wouldn't have nearly the same pull or the same interest or the same, oh, let's check this out. This might be an interesting place to put, a hotel or other type of facilities. So those investments that come not only from investing in the bike trail and the people coming to utilize the bike trail and all the amenities in the area, it's really about watching that be a catalyst for growth and investment in our area, but beyond what you think of traditional just mountain biking industry.
Bill, I'm going to ask you the same question, but from a little bit different perspective. So think about you as a healthcare provider in Greater Grand Rapids area, and obviously there's health benefits, right? But talk a little bit about recruitment to this area. So myself and others are involved in Thrive Up North, which is a rural recruitment marketing campaign, and outdoor recreation and that life-work balance has been high on everybody's list that has given us feedback of why they are interested in our area. So just kind of talk about that from a recruitment and you and your wife coming here, right? You told me that was one of the reasons you came.
Yeah, so we actually moved in 2009, so that was before the trail exactly, but like a lot of the outdoor draw was one of the reasons we moved in. So I think it was interesting because part of what got me involved in the positions I ended up taking as part of Grimbo was that we needed to fundraise. And so then I know some people at the hospital like to bike, so I'll ask around and just, it was amazing the amount of providers and employees that mountain biked and that were willing to donate. And so I think it just kind of opened my eyes to what that held in our community. The number of people I didn't realize were interested in that. And I think we look at, I feel like we've actually done a pretty good job at trying to task with recruiting in general. When I look at other places I could go and some of the struggle they have with finding providers. So, but I know for sure in Crosby, like they can cite a whole bunch of doctors and other providers that they've been able to recruit through the coming trails. So I think the other big thing, obviously I like the health benefit and just seeing the increase in ridership and the number of people that get out. But I think I'm also pleased that we've been able to grow the mountain bike group or club through all of this. So there was definitely a you build it and they will come type thing, like the ground stages and nothing's happening. It was a lot harder to get people to do stuff than once there's trails on the ground and people are riding them and they want to keep them in good shape.
David, this is for you. So you've been involved in some mountain bike events and different things like that. We've just kind of started to dip our toes and what that looks like. And we don't have an events coordinator here, in the Greater Grand Rapids area. Kind of give us an idea of what those events do for communities at trail locations like Tioga.
Yeah, absolutely. We've mainly done winter-oriented events through 45 North, brand that I've been working with for years. And we've done these winter events all over the Midwest. There's the Great Lakes Fat Bike Series. events in Marquette, Michigan, a big event in Crosby. We were the title sponsor of that called the Whiteout. And it would bring, 300-400 people to town for the weekend in the winter. And, when we first started doing this, people would come to Crosby and be like, gosh, where do I eat? And they'd have to drive 20 miles away to go to Raynor to eat, or they wouldn't stay overnight because there just weren't the amenities there to serve them. And as we continued doing these events over the years, bringing people in, a coffee shop started, the bike shop was a part of that operation, a new restaurant came to life. Now there's a shop in town that serves ice cream and gourmet food goods that people from the Twin Cities would be looking for when they come up to visit. So as we've been holding this event over the years, we've been seeing more and more people really realizing that this community has evolved in ways that really help them have a better experience there. And you just see it in the number of businesses on the street in Crosby. In 2010, when the trails opened down there, I was there the day that they opened. And it was like, where do I camp? Where do I get breakfast? And now there are choices. And that was a 10-year span, and it's just been absolutely remarkable. I go there and ride the trails now too, and but there'll be high schoolers out there, and they're passing me, of course, going really fast. But it's just amazing to see so many young kids get out on bikes as well, and they're winning events like this.
Yeah.
That the local kid shows up and he's like top 3. And it's just amazing to see that a 10-year span and what it's done for young people as well. And that's really an important point. How are we building community beyond business? What are we doing for the life trajectory of young kids and habits that they're developing? And I think I know there's a lot of value in the trails. I think back to when I was growing up, there weren't mountain bike events like there are now. The trails were not available. It was riding snowmobile trails. And it's just amazing to see what there's available now for young kids to get started on.
Definitely. And pass it to Max. So Max, you talked about development and kind of what the future is of this, and that would be kind of leading into the next question is, what is the next phase? If it's at Tioga, if it's within the city of Cohasset, you ever made reference to Crosby, Ironton area. Sarah and I did a road trip through another project that we're doing, and we stopped in Crosby, Ironton, and we can't believe the growth there, right? So Max, give us a little, for those that may not know, what is that? What is that planned development?
So Cohasset is working with a developer. The city purchased, previously it was a lumber mill site, approximately 40 acres on the Mississippi River, just south of Highway 2. And we're looking at a 64-unit hotel, about 100 units of housing, a hockey rink, a covered turf field house, a marina, actually could be 2 different marinas, and a boat launch and dry stack storage, and including approximately 15,000 square feet of retail space, kind of building out a downtown marina destination, location that people can come and spend time and have access to lakes, have access to bike trails, golf courses. And like I said, really the Tioga was the catalyst for the developer, having interest in that facility and really driving that project for the last 18 months. And so I think that's the really exciting part about what some of these trail systems, like I said, I think you can't underscore the economic impact of that these trail systems are bringing to our community. We look at it with at about 35,000 users a year, that equates to approximately $3.5 million in economic impact. You think about what hockey means to a community like Grand Rapids. Well, hockey is approximately 3.4 million. So you just created, basically from thin air, you just created economic impact that matches one of your most significant attributes as a community. So to be able to be a part of that and watch that grow, and to really have been a part of creating that, I think it's an amazing perspective. And to me, it's almost one where you start to say, well, what are other areas where nationally there are some activities or things that we could and should be investing in that could add value to our community that we aren't even aware that it could be possible. That's what I mean when I sit in my seat. It's what's the next mountain biking? What's the next Tioga for the city of Cohasset and the Grand Rapids area? And I think that's part of that exciting, looking at what's ahead and what does growth look like for Itasca County, moving forward.
I love that you will mention that because at Visit Grand Rapids, we're always trying to stay above the curve and what is next. Trails are a huge opportunity for us in our area. We have the land, we have existing trails, and we have opportunities to develop new trails. So coming up next year, we're working on a federal grant that we're hoping to have completed by the end of the month. I look at Sarah because her and I both been sick for a week. I've been on vacation. We have no idea how we're going to make the date, but by October 29th, our goal is to submit this grant. Where I'm going with this is we don't have a lot of statistical information about our trails and who's using them and what is the economic impact. So the goal is to do a full year-long study of all of our trails in Itasca County, from non-motorized to motorized. This is a huge project that Sarah and I are kind of spearheading, and it'll be interesting to see if we are able to secure the grant. The issue has been time and resources to do a study like this. We've been talking about this for over 10 years because people ask me all the time, how many people use our trails? What's the demographic of our trail users? I can guess, and I'm probably going to be in the ballpark, but I think it would be good to have real data. It helps us secure additional grants. It helps us secure additional development and opportunity for our community. So that is coming up hopefully next year. Just I'm going to pass to Phil, and Phil, talk about the youth. David's talked about the youth, and you have a son that started on a bike, and I can't believe how fast he was. We did a photo shoot with Phil and his wife, and we were at Legion, and I was like, wow, I don't even remember how old he is, but he surpassed me long. Kind of talk about the youth and talk about that opportunity for the future, right? David, you had kind of talked about it. What does that look like for our community in the greater Grand Rapids area?
Yeah, so my son is currently 9, and what kept me tied into continuing to volunteer and even want to work with, keep going through all those was just the enthusiasm when he rode and he was narrating how great a little basic trail a few years ago when he was younger, and now we can go to all the trails, and so I think it's great because the high schoolers passing you. I mean that's exactly it. There's a mountain bike team, so there's a national organization called NICA. So and we have middle school here as well through the Minnesota Cycling League, and so we have kids from middle school to high school on a bike team, and it went from I think there was 8 to 18 to 30 to I don't know in the 50s potentially this year. And just the need for adult volunteers and the training, and as it's grown, we've been able to get more people on board. So I think just you get the passion from the early age and build on it. And so I think that's been fantastic. And getting the kids involved has been a way to get adults involved. So you're getting lots of parents out on bikes who wouldn't be on bikes otherwise, but their children are. So now it's a whole family activity, or they're willing to volunteer to be a coach because their kids involved. And so I think that's been huge. And we have a woman in town, Sherry Schrock. She's been doing a lot of training for younger kids. So if you want to learn to ride a bike, proper skills, and doing classes. And so I think one sort of interesting thing has been trying to get adults to ride. It's like, well, no, we have soccer this night and hockey and we're busy. And so no one will commit. And then you can say, well, okay, Tuesday, it's going to be this age kids ride, boom, full. And so what parents will do and commit to kids, and then you build on that. So I think that has been the real route forward, I guess.
Awesome. Max, so you Cohasset citizen residents can borrow mountain bikes. Is that correct?
Yes, our Parks and Trails department has approximately 7 mountain bikes and fat bikes that we allow free use. It was really one of those things, there's a little bit of a challenge with mountain biking. You need equipment, right? And really looking at building out this, how, allow residents the opportunity to try the sport at significant dollars, without knowing whether they like it, love it, or even like it at all. So I think that was one of the things that we developed in the very beginning was, how can we get connect people with the access to actually utilize these trails? Because we've spent the money, we've done all the the heavy lifting to build these things, and now how do we get local residents out on those trails taking advantage of this thing?
So I borrowed a bike from Max. I'm a resident of Cohasset. And I brought it home and I said, okay, my daughter and I can go out and ride. I stayed on the whatever the first run trail was. It scares the crap out of me to go down those hills. I think it's cool and I love to market promote it. But so she took it. She went on a few more rides. And after that, since she's bought her own bike. So she can ride it on tar and she can ride it, so it's a cross bike. I don't know what the brand is or anything like that, but it did lead to her, purchasing a bike. We helped her with that expense because they're expensive bikes, right? The investment is huge. And I think that that's really cool that our community has done that. I also think that it's really cool that they're crossover between the mountain biking trail and then the access in and out of Cohasset. And we talked about what that looks like so that we're talking about the greater Grand Rapids area and we're not singling out one community or another, but the opportunity to collaborate and partner together. That is going to be an advantage to all of us as we go forward. So Max, while you have the microphone, kind of talk about some barriers that you've been up against and maybe some barriers of future development.
I think obviously you don't build something like Tioga without a few challenges along the way. And back to the collaboration, there are a multitude of organizations that become involved with a project like this. Tioga is both on Minnesota School Trust land and tax forfeit property managed by the DNR and Itasca County. So from the beginning, you've got the city of Cohasset, you've got Itasca County, you've got the DNR, you've got Bike Club, you've got, you look at Tioga, it's funded by about different funding sources. This wasn't just IRRD paid for the whole project. This was, we went and uncovered every rock that we could and found every dollar that we could from every source that we could possibly find. But with that also comes, those organizations need to be collaborating with each other and working with each other and not actually actively working against each other. And I think that was really, I look at, we build out the first couple miles and then 10 months later, we get a surprise visit and a cease and desist letter from the DNR. The day before, we're mobilizing 15 national construction companies in the most aggressive, mountain bike trail building process that had ever taken place. And 2 days before, we get a cease and desist letter and say, you can't build. Like, wait a minute, we're going to lose $3 million in about 2 months if we don't, if we do nothing. If you just cease and desist this thing, we're done. We pay these people $50,000 a day, whether they build a foot of trail or a mile of trail. Well, I feel like that could have been handled with a little bit, softer glove. It could have been with a little bit more collaboration, with a little bit more of respect for the time, energy, and investment that had been made. So I just, to me, the challenge, if part of that specific project comes at, it took 8 years to do the project. So the people that worked for the county and the DNR in the beginning and that were a part of the process were not the people that were there towards the end. And so from a lot of standpoint, this project just got thrown on their desk. They had no buy-in, they had no necessarily care for it. And that became a significant challenge when you're talking about organizations that maybe think they're nimble and agile, but aren't. So how do you, I feel like the challenge and the lesson learned is, how do you get these organizations really working together? I mean, I think to the book, Startup Communities, and the concept of leaders and feeders. You've got the leaders who are out there, tip of the spear, driving projects, driving business. And then you also need those feeders, those government organizations, those other organizations that are stakeholders and support, that require their support. I don't have an answer. I just know that looking back, that was an extremely difficult challenge trying to build out this project, facing headwinds rather than, having some tailwinds on our side. And, that's just one example of probably two handfuls in an 8-year process. But like I said, a project like that doesn't get built without a little bit of challenge. And if you have, groups that are really, from a support standpoint, working together and being supportive of some of those projects, it's amazing how different it is. I look at phase 2 of Tioga. We presented Itasca County with a map and a potential campground location. And as far as I know, it got basically a no, and it's sitting on somebody's desk. But now, the land department at Itasca County is building trails in Nashua. I mean, I guess I get confused as to, you're not only did you take money and cause Tioga to be built with less quality and less timely, you're actually going to pay for some of these trails in other locations. And I mean, Tioga is, when you're the tip of the spear, maybe not everybody thinks it's a great idea. We had a lot of people that were naysayers through that process, but you can't naysay how many people use it and what's there now. And to the point of, oh, well, maybe it's a great idea for these other communities, which I agree. But I also think that there's ways that how is the land management handled? But those properties, because of bike trails, could be conveyed to the local communities and allow them the opportunity to go out and build those rather than having to pay lease agreements. The city of Cohasset through the Tioga project, we're leasing space at Tioga's on leased land. It was $160,000 that we could have put towards trail development or more mountain bikes or other things, but it's going toward leasing public lands for a public project for a municipality. And I think it's really interesting if you look at all the trails that have been built. They've all been built differently. Cuyuna was a DNR project. Tioga is a city project, but it's funded by a little bit of everything. Redhead is funded 100% by IRRB. Giants Ridge is IRRB plus some of their local, hotel dollars that have been generated. And then you look at Duluth, that's already, this amazing local facility that has, the city of Duluth has personnel managing that. And the volunteers and time that it takes to maintain these trails and the dollars that it's going to take to maintain these trails, it's not insignificant. There's still some significant challenges that we faced, that we're going to face. But then I think back to, it is just amazing for me to think 8 years ago when we started this project, and really, Redhead wasn't really a project at that point. Giants Ridge wasn't really a project at that point. To look at Ride the Range and Duluth and all of the trail systems that are being built up the North Shore, what that's doing for northern Minnesota from a tourism and attraction standpoint, whether it's getting locals to want to live here, to getting tourists to want to come visit here. It is amazing to think that this industry really didn't exist before 10 years ago, and now it is probably one of our most important tourist attractions that we have, that maybe some people don't even realize quite yet, but it is definitely an extremely valuable resource that we have now that's been invested in. Now it's about how do we capitalize on what we have, market it properly, and get all those people to understand what's here and come see it and use it.
So one of the last questions that I have was, what is needed from the community to maintain and future development? And we want to pass that too, if you want to start it and pass it on or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I wanted to include one way that Grimba as a group thought about tackling this problem. So, we need people to buy in, and I think when it took a long time to get a project going with a number of obstacles, we didn't keep all the same people either. And so keeping some kind of traction going as a volunteer organization was very difficult. And so, for any future development, I think that's if one person going to stay and spearhead it, that's one thing, but that's not probably likely. I think it's going to be turnover. And so having some background, like with the city as a consistent driver, help greatly. And so as far as maintenance, I think we still have burnout. Like, I don't want to be in charge of things for very long. Like, I want someone else to come along. Where's that person? They haven't shown up. But we did adopt the trail. And so we said, as a business or a group, people can adopt the trail. So we have larger places like Grand Itasca and ICC, the community college have adopted the trail. Some individual businesses, just some individuals that live along the trail. And so then they take ownership to go out and leaf blower, weed whipper, things that are basic. And then when it comes to working on the trail, fixing erosion, things like that, that becomes a club task and we can arrange a date. And so I think some of ideas of partnership, that's also a future way and one way to kind of build the community as a whole, as well as keep the trails in good shape as a future enjoyment.
Awesome. So I'm going to turn to the audience and see if you guys have any specific questions for our panelists.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So, and I'm not sure, maybe more for David, the biking industry to me can be kind of an inclusive community, especially if you're not a mountain biker. So my question is in your opinion, aside from immersing yourself in the biking community, what can small businesses do here locally to put them in the position to attract, access, and take advantage of some of the opportunities that this obviously has catapulted here in the region?
Well, what I've seen communities do throughout the country, there's typically a local bike shop that will have a club, and then the club is involved with trail maintenance or trail building in some cases. And then the bike club is also, because it's run through a bike shop usually, it's connecting other businesses with initiatives like cleaning the trails up, or if you're a part of the club, you can get a discount at this business, or many of these other businesses start to get involved outside of the bike world in actually helping build the community around the trails. So in a lot of cases, it starts around the heart of independent bicycle retail in the area, but key to really, expanding the activity is really an organized club, and that's usually connected to an independent retailer. And when it comes to non-bike shop businesses, thinking about the experience that visitors want to have. So that's breweries, wood-fired pizza, it's small little resort cabins that they can rent for $100 there, a little bit more, on the weekends, and having the amenities there in those spaces to have safe bike storage, or you can even work on your bike at this